before the film sets, before the endless castings, and before his face became recognizable in international productions, Christian Oliver was simply a child growing up in a divided Germany, in a Europe that still carried visible scars from the Cold War. Christian Oliver was born on March 3, 1972, in Celle, a small town in northern West Germany. It was not a place associated with show business or the film industry. It was a quiet, structured environment where the future usually followed predictable paths. Study, work, start a family. Art was not a priority, much less a viable career. From a young age, Christian showed a constant restlessness. He did not fully fit into rigid molds. He had a particular presence, a mix of introspection and charisma that did not go unnoticed, even if at that time no one identified it as something exceptional. He was more the kind of person who observed, who listened, who absorbed the world around him. During his adolescence, Germany was going through profound transformations. The fall of the Berlin Wall, political reorganization, the feeling of entering a new historical stage. That climate of change also influenced a generation that began to look beyond borders. Christian was part of that generation. His initial interest was not focused exclusively on acting. Like many young Europeans of the time, he explored different paths before finding a clear one. However, film and television began to appear as a real possibility when he moved to Hamburg, a city with greater cultural and artistic activity. It was there that he began to make contact with the world of modeling and acting, not out of excessive ambition, but through a combination of curiosity and opportunity. His striking appearance, height, defined features, a natural presence in front of the camera, led him to start receiving offers in an environment that, while competitive, was more open than traditional Hollywood. But the path was neither immediate nor easy. Christian Oliver did not burst into the industry overnight. His first steps were marked by minor jobs, failed castings, and small roles that did not guarantee stability. He quickly learned one of the first lessons of the artistic world. Visibility does not always come with security. Unlike other actors who train from childhood in prestigious academies, Christian built his craft progressively, almost artisanally, observing, correcting, adapting. Every experience, no matter how small, added up. Every rejection did too. During those early years, he made a key decision to internationalize his career. Germany offered opportunities, but also clear limits. To grow, he had to leave. He had to expose himself to larger, more demanding markets. That ambition would lead him to cross the Atlantic. Moving to the United States was not an impulsive act. It was a calculated and risky bet, leaving behind his country, his primary language, his support network, to enter an industry known for devouring aspirants. But Christian understood something fundamental. If he wanted to move forward, he had to make himself uncomfortable. The first years in the United States were hard. Constant auditions, secondary roles, brief appearances in series and films that did not always leave a mark. However, each step brought him a little closer to the industry he had chosen to face. During that period, Christian began to adopt a more international identity. His accent, far from being an obstacle, became a distinctive trait. He did not try to erase it completely. He learned to live with it, to use it when necessary, to shape it without losing authenticity. Before fame, there was perseverance. Before recognition, there was anonymity. Before headlines, there was silence. Christian Oliver was still not a known name. He still did not have leading roles. He was still not part of the visible machinery of Hollywood. But he was moving forward, step by step, role by role, scene by scene. And that progress, slow but constant, would soon lead him to a breaking point, the moment when the industry would finally begin to look at him with different eyes. Arriving in Hollywood does not mean arriving at success. For most, it means entering an endless waiting room, and Christian Oliver discovered this very quickly. Settled in Los Angeles, he began to go through the most thankless stage of any artistic career, being visible but not indispensable. Being close to the industry but not inside it. auditioning for roles that did not always come through, competing with hundreds of similar faces, accepting small roles knowing they could lead to nothing or to everything. During those early years, Christian began appearing in American television productions, not as a protagonist but as a guest actor, secondary, almost fleeting. But each appearance had strategic value, exposure. His face began to repeat itself. His name began to appear timidly in credits that some producers did read. The real change came when he began landing roles in popular series, especially in productions aimed at young and adult audiences, where his physical presence and sober style fit naturally. He was not the exaggerated heartthrob nor the caricatured villain. Christian offered something different: a tense calm, a natural seriousness, a quiet credibility. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, his career took a small but crucial leap when he was chosen to participate in internationally high-profile series such as Saved by the Bell, The New Class, and other television productions that, while not turning him into a star, positioned him within the system. That was the moment when Christian stopped being the European actor trying to break through and became a reliable professional. Punctual, adaptable, capable of working across different genres and registers. And in Hollywood, that is worth as much as talent. At the same time, he began receiving offers for film. Again, they were not leading roles, but they carried greater narrative weight. Appearances that required presence, not just being in front of the camera. Films where he shared scenes with established actors, learning firsthand how the real machinery of commercial cinema operated. One of the factors that worked in his favor was his international profile. In an increasingly global industry, Christian could represent the sophisticated European, the elegant antagonist, the enigmatic ally. He was not pigeonholed into a single type of character, and that broadened his opportunities. Over time, he also began working in European and international productions, keeping one foot in both worlds. He did not abandon his roots. He understood that his identity could be a bridge, not an obstacle. During this stage, his name still did not appear in headlines, but it did appear in databases, casting folders, internal conversations. That German actor, the one who always delivers, that reputation, quiet but solid, was key to what would come next. The development of his fame was not explosive. It was cumulative. Each project added credibility. Each credit built a career that, without making noise, moved forward with firmness. And then came the point when that accumulation of small steps began to produce visible results. More ambitious productions, higher budget projects, roles that were no longer merely functional but memorable. Christian Oliver was entering a new stage. He was no longer unknown. He was not a star either, but he was definitely on the radar. And when an actor achieves that, the next step can be decisive. It can mean definitive ascent or becoming trapped on a plateau few manage to escape. In Christian's case, the balance was beginning to tilt. The true turning point in Christian Oliver's career did not come from a single role, but from sustained consolidation. By the mid-2000s, after years of steady work, his name no longer raised doubts at production tables. It generated expectations. Christian had achieved something many actors never do: a stable international career without depending on a single market. He could work in the United States, in Germany, in European co-productions, and maintain continuity that allowed him, at least in part, to choose the projects he wanted to be involved in. His face began to be associated with narratively significant characters, not necessarily absolute protagonists, but key figures within stories. Officers, scientists, complex antagonists, authority figures with internal layers. Roles that demanded more than physical presence. They demanded credibility. One of the most visible moments of this stage was his participation in internationally high-profile film productions such as Valkyrie, a major film starring Tom Cruise. Although his role was not central, simply being part of a production of that level marked a clear milestone in his trajectory. Being in that type of project meant something very concrete. Christian Oliver had reached a tier accessible only to actors with proven track records. He was no longer a gamble. He was a safe choice. Alongside film, his television work remained solid. European and American series continued adding him to their casts, taking advantage of his versatility and ability to adapt to different narrative styles. Historical drama, thriller, action, science fiction. Christian moved naturally between genres. But the highest point of his career is not measured only in titles. It is measured in stability, and in that sense, this period was the most solid of his professional life. He had continuity of work, internal recognition, and a clear identity within the industry. However, behind that public stability, silent tensions were beginning to appear. The type of fame Christian achieved was not one of constant magazine covers or permanent flashes. It was a more discreet, more functional fame. And while healthy in many ways, it could also become frustrating. Because in Hollywood, being close to the center is not the same as being at the center. For some actors, that invisible limit becomes a barrier difficult to accept. There is no evident failure, but no definitive breakthrough either. There is no fall, but no vertiginous rise. It is a gray zone where the career continues, but momentum slows. Christian, far from giving up, chose to diversify. He began to get more involved in independent productions, smaller projects, stories with greater artistic weight. Films that did not seek big box office returns, but narrative depth. That shift spoke of professional maturity, of someone who was no longer chasing only visibility, but meaning. But it also marked the beginning of a different stage. Less media exposure, more quiet work. Meanwhile, his personal life advanced in parallel. Christian started a family, became a father, and began balancing his identity between actor and man offset. That balance, however, is not always easy to maintain in an industry that demands constant presence. The highest point of his career was also an internal turning point, a moment when everything seemed to be in place. And at the same time, something was beginning to change. Because when the summit does not bring the expected satisfaction, the inevitable question appears. What now? Christian Oliver still had projects ahead. He still had open paths, but the rhythm was no longer the same. The industry kept turning, faster, more demanding, less patient. And in that context, with no visible signs of tragedy, his story began slowly moving toward an unexpected ending. January 4th, 2024, began as an ordinary day in the Caribbean. The sky was clear, the sea calm, and the small airport on the island of Bequia operated with the usual tranquility of a tourist destination far from the noise of the world. Nothing suggested that, just hours later, that place would be forever linked to a tragedy that would shake the entertainment industry. Christian Oliver was there with his two daughters, Medita and Anik, enjoying a few days of rest. It was not a promotional or work trip. It was personal time, father time away from the unpredictable rhythm of a career that, for decades, had shaped his calendar. The plan was simple. Take a private small plane from Bequia to the nearby island of St. Lucia. A short, routine flight, the kind made daily in the region. The aircraft was piloted by Robert Sachs, an American businessman with experience in private flights. Minutes after takeoff, something went wrong. According to later official reports, the small plane experienced difficulties shortly after becoming airborne. Witnesses on the ground reported seeing the aircraft lose stability, describing an abrupt descent before crashing into the sea. There was no time for visible emergency maneuvers. There were no prior signs to warn the passengers of what was about to happen. The impact was fatal. Local authorities confirmed hours later that there were no survivors. Christian Oliver, his two daughters, and the pilot died in the accident. The news spread rapidly, first through regional outlets, then across international headlines. The contrast was brutal. An actor with decades of career, a father, two children, a short flight, a definitive ending. Hollywood, accustomed to dramatic but scripted farewells, was faced with a real tragedy dry without epic or warning. There was no prolonged illness. There were no public goodbyes. There was no time to prepare. The reaction was immediate. colleagues, directors, producers, and actors who had worked with Christian began sharing messages of disbelief and grief. Many agreed on the same things: his professionalism, his kindness, his low profile. He was not a scandal-driven figure. He was not a name omnipresent in the press, but he was deeply respected. The impact was even greater because of the presence of his daughters in the accident. The human dimension of the tragedy surpassed any professional consideration. It was not just the loss of an actor, but of an entire family cut short in seconds. Investigations confirmed it was an aviation accident, with no indication of external intervention. An uncomfortable reminder of how fragile life can be, even in seemingly safe contexts. For many followers, the news was disorienting. Christian Oliver was not associated with excess or risky behavior. His public image was that of someone balanced, committed to his work and his family. Precisely for that reason, the tragedy hit harder. In retrospect, his career seemed open, still active, still relevant, still with projects ahead. There were no signs of farewell in his filmography. There was no final role announced as such. The ending arrived without prior narrative, without music, without warning. And in that abrupt silence, an unsettling sensation remained floating, that of a story interrupted, not concluded. The industry kept turning, as always. Shoots continued. Releases did not stop. But for a few days, the name Christian Oliver appeared in headlines accompanied by a word no one expects to read next to a life still in motion: tragedy. His death was not a cinematic climax. It was a hard cut, a real fade to black. And as happens with many true stories, the ending offered no answers, only absence. When a life ends suddenly, the first question is not usually what was done, but what is left behind. In Christian Oliver's case, the answer is not written in box office records or accumulated awards, but in something quieter and more persistent. A career built with consistency, respect, and professionalism in an industry that rarely rewards those qualities visibly. Christian Oliver was not a scandal star. He was not a name omnipresent on red carpets. He did not live off headlines or controversy. And yet, he worked for more than 2 decades without disappearing, without burning out, without completely fading away. In Hollywood, that is already a form of success. His cinematic legacy is made up of films and series that, taken individually, may seem minor, but seen together, they tell a different story. That of an actor who was always there, holding narratives together, providing solidity, embodying characters that gave credibility to fictional worlds. Christian was the kind of performer who did not steal the scene, but anchored it. The one who allowed others to shine because the environment was believable. That role, invisible to the general public, is fundamental for cinema to work. After his death, many colleagues highlighted precisely that. They did not speak of fame or excessive success. They spoke of his work ethic, of his humanity, of his commitment to every project, regardless of size. But Christian Oliver's legacy is not limited to the screen. His story became inevitably marked by the tragedy of January 4, 2024. The simultaneous loss of him and his daughters transformed his memory into something deeper, more painful. It is no longer just the story of an actor who died young, but of a family brutally interrupted. That human dimension redefines his legacy. It forces us to look beyond the profession, to think about the invisible cost of an itinerant life, of constant travel, of everyday risks that are often normalized until the unthinkable happens. Today, when his filmography is revisited, every appearance carries a different weight. Every scene becomes, unintentionally, a permanent farewell, not because he knew it, but because now we do. Christian Oliver remains as a symbol of an uncomfortable truth: that not all stories have climaxes, that not all careers end in glory or collapse, that some simply stop. And perhaps that is where his most lasting impact lies. Because his story is not one of meteoric ascent or public downfall. It is the story of someone who worked, moved forward, built something, and one day was no longer there, as happens with most real lives, far from the perfect script. In that sense, Christian Oliver represents a vast number of names that sustain the industry from the shadows. Actors, technicians, creatives, entire families who exist outside the spotlight, but without whom nothing would function. His legacy is quiet, but it is real. And when a story like this fades out, an inevitable question lingers in the air. How many similar lives go unnoticed until a tragedy makes them visible? Because behind every name that was not a superstar, there is a complete story, with dreams, sacrifices, partial successes, and abrupt endings. And that question leads us, almost without realizing it, toward the next story. Another real life, another known name, or not so much. Another career built in silence. Another ending no one saw coming. But that is a story for another video.